It's Thursday, the 17th of March, 2022. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael.
All right, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Sean, story number 1 today. Investors will receive $36 billion in dividends in coming weeks. That's nearly 40% more than a year earlier, as some of Australia's largest companies share the spoils with shareholders.
That's right, Michael. Around $4.3 billion has already been paid out, but dividends now start to ramp up, with more than $20 billion due in the week after next alone. Great news for investors, many of whom rely on the income, particularly pensioners. Dividends are a really important part of the investment landscape in Australia. In fact, Australian companies pay relatively high dividends, in part because they're tax advantaged. The dividend yield in Australia is about 4.3%, much higher than US or Europe. According to CommSec, since 2004, the share market has almost doubled in value, that's capital growth, but total returns, which includes all the payouts, means the returns have almost quadrupled. Think of that another way. $36 billion is being paid to shareholders in dividends in these few weeks, while the value of the S&P 200 is down more than 5%. Quite incredible. The big one this time around is BHP. It'll pay out $10 billion in dividends in a little over a week. That's thanks to a massive profit due to record iron ore prices. Fortescue Metals, Rio Tinto, also a part of that. They'll pay out $2.6 and $2.1 billion respectively, and Commonwealth Bank will pay out nearly $3 billion.
Sean, story number 2 today. There are big numbers on the COVID front across many states. After a bit of a quiet period, really, because we were talking about other things, COVID is really returning to the front pages.
Yes, unfortunately, it really is. Now, New South Wales recorded 30,400 cases yesterday. 10,000 of those reflected an underreporting glitch. Still, 20,000 is the most in several weeks. The state's Health Minister, Brad Hazzard, said the subvariant of Omicron was taking over in New South Wales. It's more transmissible than previous variants, but the outcomes were no more severe. In Victoria, the subvariant's on the rise. Case numbers are expected to increase over the next 6 weeks or so. It recorded 9,400 cases yesterday. That's the highest in a month for Victoria. Queensland announced 6,100 infections. Western Australia was at 6,000. South Australia at 3,100. Tasmania was 1,900, and the ACT recorded 1,200 cases. Unfortunately, these are the types of numbers we're going to be hearing for the next few weeks.
All right, story number 3. Sean, the Prime Minister Scott Morrison was talking tough yesterday on China. He was calling on the superpower to be transparent about the nature of its relationship with Russia, and particularly as it relates to military support.
Yes, the Prime Minister yesterday said, and I quote, "One thing that has disturbed me more from the outset, apart from the obvious in terms of Russia's violent and illegal invasion of Ukraine, has been the chilling silence that we saw from China. Personally, I wouldn't quite equate the human tragedy in Ukraine with Beijing's silence, but undoubtedly there's an election coming up and both sides are trying to look really tough on China." Mr. Morrison called on China to be transparent about the economic and military ties between it and Russia, and said Australia will act in lockstep with the US and other allies in imposing sanctions against China if Beijing comes to Russia's rescue. The Federal Labor Party is fully in support of this move.
All right, story 4, Sean. We know we've got borders reopening. We heard this week about cruise ships soon being allowed back. Are people travelling overseas, though? And I suppose then, on the flip side, are overseas travellers coming to Australia?
Yes, the last 3 months has been pretty good. Nowhere near the levels of, a couple of years ago. Departures, for example, are about 10% of where they were. But the latest Bureau of Statistics figures show that they're climbing. Now, Michael, where do you think most people are going to for holidays?
Look, Sean, I know that you have a holiday booked soon for Fiji. So using you solely as an example here, I'm going to say Fiji number 1.
You're correct. Fiji number 1, USA and India. They're the big 3. In terms of arrivals, it's the United Kingdom, India and the USA.
All right, final story, Sean, and I don't really know what to make of this story because I actually think it's just quite bizarre. The US Senate has passed legislation that would make daylight saving time permanent from late next year, and that's just not like permanently committing to doing it for 6 months of each year. It is permanent, year-round daylight saving.
Yes, the whole country would move forward 1 hour and never change back. Pretty funny. Now, supporters say it'll help with brighter afternoons and more economic activity. It'll allow children to play outdoors, reduce seasonal depression. It still has to pass the House of Representatives before heading to President Joe Biden's desk. but some of the stories about it are really, really funny. The National Association of Convenience Stores oppose the move because it doesn't want kids going to school in the dark. The House Energy and Commerce Committee chair is worried about the havoc it'll wreak on kids and pets. Not sure whether that's for or against. It's worth Googling this because some of the arguments are absolutely hilarious, but it's very possible that time will move forward in the US by 1 hour.
That is just extraordinary and a fantastic story, Sean, for us to finish on. That is the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 17th of March, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't quite enough for you, if you want something with a bit more detail, then you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.